with us now exclusively is Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming, the top Republican on the Congressional Committee investigating the insurrection. Congresswoman Cheney, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah.
I've never known you to be one for big emotions, but as you sit here today, 1 year later, and consider how close did we come in this country? How close did we come to the violent overthrow of a valid election?
We came very close. Our institutions held, but they only held because of the people who were willing to stand up against the pressure from former President Trump. People at his own Department of Justice who stood up to him, elected officials at the state level who stood up to him, and the law enforcement officers here at the Capitol. You just had Harry Dunn on, people like Harry and Mike Fanone, 140 law enforcement officers who fought at the tunnel to prevent thousands more from breaching the Capitol that day. We came very close, and we need to recognize how important it is that the system depends upon individuals, and that we make sure that it never happens again.
Your co-chair, Benny Thompson, has said we came critically close to the end of democracy as we know it. The president expected to address the nation and portray our democracy as in a very fragile moment right now, not a year ago, right now. Do you agree?
I do. The threat continues. Former President Trump continues to make the same claims that he knows caused violence on January 6th. And it's very important, if you look at what's happening today in my party, in the Republican Party, rather than reject what happened on the 6th, reject the lies about the election, and make clear that a president who engaged in those activities can never be president again. Unfortunately, too many in my own party are embracing that former president, are looking the other way, are minimizing the danger. That's how democracies die, and we simply cannot let that happen.
The committee in Congress that is investigating this matter has already interviewed 300+ witnesses, looked at 35,000 pages of documents. Big picture first. For those who think maybe this was a protest that got emotional, out of control, how high does it go? Have you been surprised or alarmed by anything you have unearthed so far in the committee?
You know, we have unearthed new things in every single aspect of our investigation. I'm confident that we'll continue to do so. We've had tremendous cooperation from many, many people, including people in the president's inner circle, people who were in the West Wing that day, people who have come forward to us with information about what they saw and what they know. And I'm confident that cooperation will continue. The committee is absolutely determined to ensure that we understand the entire plot, the entire plan to overthrow the election, to really overturn the rule of law. You know, we had over 60 courts in this country that ruled against the claims the former president was making, and yet he rejected those rulings and attempted to overturn the will of the people. That simply cannot happen in the United States.
I know the committee is zeroing in on a key time frame, a chunk of about 3 hours in the afternoon of January 6th. At 1:10 or so, the president tells his crowd, his protesters, at a speech to march on the Capitol, and it's not till 187 minutes later that he releases a video statement telling them to go home. What have you learned about those 187 minutes? How would you characterize the president's conduct or lack thereof in those moments?
We know, Savannah, that the president was watching television in his private dining room off the Oval Office. We know from firsthand testimony that he was watching the violent assault on the Capitol. We also know that he could have at any moment walked the very few steps to the White House briefing room. He could have gone on the air and told the people who were his supporters assaulting the Capitol to go home. He did not do that. And we are very focused on the minute-by-minute activities at the White House, what he was doing. And again, as I said, we now have firsthand testimony about the extent to which he was watching television and was refusing to ask people to stop, ask them to go home.
There's been reporting that the committee is looking for outtakes of that video, previous versions that the president recorded before the one that he ultimately released. Do you have information that he gave a different kind of message in some of those videos that never saw the light of day?
Well, we certainly are focused on that, looking at it. We will, in fact, be ensuring that we have access to those videos. You know, one of the things the committee is very engaged in right now is litigation. The former president is attempting to hide behind executive privilege claims. We've won now in the lower court. We've won now in the appellate court. That case is now potentially in front of the Supreme Court. But we will not let the former president hide behind these phony claims of privilege, and we will get to the bottom of things like that video, the outtakes of that video, and everything else that was going on that day, both his action and his refusal to take action.
Well, let me put a fine point on it. Have you seen conduct have you heard about conduct from witnesses or otherwise that suggests that there is a potential criminal case against the president?
Certainly, we will be looking at that. There are important questions in front of the committee, such as whether or not, through his action or inaction, President Trump attempted to obstruct an official proceeding of Congress, attempted to delay the count of electoral votes. Those are questions the committee is looking at. We also know, certainly, that it was a supreme dereliction of duty when the President of the United States refuses to take action to stop a violent assault on the Congress, to stop a violent assault on any of the co-equal branches of government. That's clearly a dereliction of duty. And we will, I'm sure, be getting more information.
Sorry to jump in, but I have a couple more things to get to. How does former Vice President Pence fit into this case? Are you willing to subpoena him to get his testimony? Do you think he'll cooperate?
Former Vice President Pence was a hero on January 6th. He refused the pressure of the former president. He did his duty, and the nation should be very grateful for the actions that he took that day. We look forward to continuing the cooperation that we've had with members of former Vice President's team, and look forward as well to his cooperation.
You know, even as you investigate January 6th, the current threat is still looming large. As mentioned, in 16 states, there are pending laws that would change election rules to give more power to politicians and the state legislatures rather than election officials and governors. There are at least 18 Trump loyalists, election deniers who are running for Secretary of State. 71% of Republicans believe the election was stolen. About a third think that political violence is justified in some circumstances. Is the former president, President Trump, in a better position today, legally, politically, rhetorically, than he was a year ago to subvert a U.S. election?
We will not allow him to subvert a U.S. election. He is certainly continuing his efforts in that regard. I think it's incumbent upon every one of us who's elected, it's incumbent upon every American out there to ensure when they're casting their vote, when they're deciding whom they're going to support, that they are aware that there are candidates that this former president is attempting to support who, for example, would not have certified the election results last time around. That's going to be a critical part of our upcoming elections, and we all have a duty to ensure that he cannot subvert this democracy.
And finally, Congressman, you know, a year ago, it was all there for us to see, this violent mob attacking police officers, attacking our Capitol, live on television, and it was unthinkable that anyone could deny it, and yet that is exactly what has happened. Take a look.
The vast majority in Washington, D.C. today were peaceful.
By and large, it was peaceful protests.
This is one of the big lies, that this was a coordinated insurrection.
If you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
If people are willing to believe voices like that and spin like that instead of their own eyes, what hope is there for your committee or for any investigation here?
I have tremendous hope, Savannah. There are millions of Americans across this country who understand their responsibility with respect to defending the institutions, defending the Constitution. And all of those people that you just played, all of my colleagues, anyone who attempts to minimize what happens, anyone who denies the truth of what happened, they ought to be ashamed of themselves. And history is watching, and history will judge them. But the American people have the ability to ensure that we protect our Constitution and we protect our institutions with their votes, with their voices, and we certainly are not going to be part on our committee of allowing those institutions to be unraveled.
Congresswoman Liz Cheney, thank you very much for your time this morning.